Hello, my name is Daryl Harder, and right now what I'm doing is the administrative data entry at Topeka Rescue Mission. I grew up in a little town, Topeka, Kansas. I realized that as I was getting older that it was important for me to really do my best. I was a pretty good student. I served in the National Honor Society for 3 years, and I was an officer my senior year. I decided to apply to one school, and that was University of Kansas, and was accepted there. And that was a real culture shock for someone from a small town to go to a school that had about 16,000 enrollment and about 4,000 or 5,000 in my freshman class. Anyway, I graduated in 4 years with a degree in education. After that, I thought it would be good if I just took a few more classes in biology. I began to really enjoy classes in anatomy and physiology, and I could take those as electives. So I had anatomy, physiology, and biochemistry as electives. And so I decided to go to Iowa State University in Ames to get more education in biology. But my second year, I had taken cellular biology, medical physiology, and biochemistry. Really enjoyed the physiology, and so I applied to just one school at the time, and that was the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And that was another culture shock, because if KU and Iowa State were big schools, University of Illinois, being a Big Ten school, was a huge school. I was very well prepared in the coursework because I had a good background at KU and Iowa State, but the lab research was something else. But after working 5 years very hard, I was allowed to do postdoctoral work in Marseille, France. From day one, when I lived in France, I at least made a big effort to speak French. Within a few weeks, I presented my dissertation research to the group in French. But after a year, I decided to come back. Again, I was out of the American spotlight, and I was still publishing and still doing research, but in order to really get at least consideration for a tenure-track faculty position at the university or an industrial position, I would have to probably have a little higher visibility here in America. After finishing up some of my work at Illinois, then I took another postdoctoral position in physiology and cellular biology at the University of Kansas. After 2 years, I ended up doing another postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Texas. And that was one of those positions that, even though I was there for just 18 months, everything seemed to fall in place. From my very first experiment, I was able to get that published. I published in the Journal of Biological Chemistry, which is a top-notch biochemistry journal. Everything seemed to be going well, and I published 8 full publications from my year and a half there, which is a lot. Yet, I was still feeling like, is this really all there is to life? I was getting kind of burnt out, and I was to the point that after 5 years of postdoc of making minimum wage, I was about ready to apply to just become a teacher at some community college, because I wanted to go back into teaching, at least on some level. But at about that time, I had gone to a meeting, the biochemistry meeting, and someone had seen my work. And I got a call for an interview at the #1 pharmaceutical company in medical diagnostics at the time. And so I thought, this could be, exactly what I need. This was a very great learning experience. I was in a superb group. But after 3 years, they decided that the project and the group that I was in needed to be reorganized into some other group. So I was there for an additional 5 years in a group that I didn't want to necessarily be in, but I still continued to publish. I had 3 patents awarded in medical diagnostics for the tests that we did. And then after that I decided, well, maybe I'll go to a little smaller company in Columbus, Ohio. I was there for another 7 or 8 years, and I was really becoming disillusioned by what life was. Just like every day was another battle. It was more difficult for me to deal with all this. I was starting to suffer from seasonal depression. I really just walked away from a good paying job, and really that was the beginning of my downward spiral. I was battling a lot of demons. Depression was really working at me. I became really quite reclusive, pretty much given up on life. When my assets were dwindling, I was looking for an exit strategy. By the time I had lost my house, within just a couple of days, my high blood pressure that was untreated and my depression pretty much took over. Had a massive stroke. And by the time the paramedics got to me, my kidney function was down to about 10 or 15%. Probably within the next half hour, I would have died. But, in God's great master plan, that was probably the first thing he did, was he spared me. Something that doesn't always happen with stroke. I had complete paralysis on my left side, but I didn't seem to have much brain involvement. In fact, it was reversible. I went through therapy for about a week and a half, and I didn't enjoy that because I was not in the right frame of mind that I wanted to be saved in any way. I was still, I think, under the darkness of Satan, because I was not a good patient, let's say. But they took me through physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy. But my mindset was such that I really was still very depressed. My brother and sister-in-law, they flew out and they flew me back to Kansas, and so clearly that was, with my mindset and unwillingness to actually work and do things, they thought that I, became an inconvenience to them. And so my sister-in-law called the rescue mission. So after a month, and this was in early May of 2012, then I registered at the rescue mission. And probably for the first couple of months, I was still in a suicidal frame of mind. After what I had gone through and the academic success and what I had done in my life, what I thought was important, in publications and awards and promotions and things like that, to end up in a homeless shelter was about the worst, was about the bottom. But again, I think in God's master plan, he knew that was exactly what I needed. That was going to be a very important first step in turning my life around. For 2 months I didn't do anything, and I thank Bill Ritchie for being a very compassionate advocate at the time, because he could have sent me away with a one-way bus ticket. After 2 months I had gone to chapel every night. Every time I would go to the rescue mission chapel, I would start to feel a little more peace and tranquility, something that I hadn't really felt in a long time. And every day I thought, I don't think suicide's the answer here. So I decided, I talked with Bill, and then of course he talked with Nell, to see if I would be acceptable to enter the Servants in Training program at the mission. And Nell, I think, was somewhat reluctant, and she said so at the graduation, because she never had a PhD in the program. And she was wondering if she, as only a high school graduate, could handle maybe the attitude that a lot of PhDs bring. But she found out that, I was certainly humble, and I was certainly willing to learn, because the Bible is certainly was an area that I had not studied for for many decades. Finished in a year, and at the end of that time, I was starting to take the Urban Ministry Institute curriculum. And Nell offered the first one right there at the mission. After that, I went into the community class that's taught at the bridge. I started taking those, and I was going to take, maybe one, maybe two, whatever would interest me, and then kind of leave it at that. But I ended up taking all 16, and of course I graduated. It's really been amazing. And during the time that I was taking a lot of the modules, I also was working at the front desk at the mission. So I always was interested not only in learning as much as I could, but also in giving back to the mission, because they were there when I needed it most, and they were there in really turning my life around over the last 6 years. And I really thank Barry and Frank and everybody that's over the mission, and all of the people that I met. Now I'm doing paperwork, which is, one of those jobs that probably not too many people would volunteer for. The last 6 years obviously has brought me, 180 degrees from where I was, because, doing things for my own glory, and now I'm just, happy and joyful and at peace, and trying to do God's work and let Him have all the glory. Yeah, it's I have, really the mission to thank for that. And I think the only regret that I have, among everything that I've done in life, is that it took me so long to find out that, after 6 decades, that the answer was, to be more Christ-centered and be less self-centered.